So my first question is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from, and how did you come to teach here at ATSU, KCOM?
Okay, well, I'm from Missouri. I actually grew up in Trenton, Missouri, which is only 65 miles from here, and my folks still live there. And so I was educated in the Midwest. I went to Missouri Western State University as an undergrad. I went to Kansas State University for my master's degree in microbiology, and then I went to Mizzou for my PhD. And then I was doing a postdoctoral fellowship with the USDA Agricultural Research Service up in Madison, Wisconsin, when this job came open. And I thought it would be a perfect mixture of being able to do research while being able to interact with students. I didn't know if I'd be a good teacher or not, and I just took it on faith that picked out a good teacher from my background and kind of tried to emulate them and just see where it would go. So that's how I ended up here.
That's cool. So what is your favorite part about teaching? If that, I think if that's not your favorite part, that's okay. But what is your
Oh,
favorite part about teaching?
well, I like to teach. I mean, I'm glad that I came here and I'm glad I got the opportunity to try this out. First of all, I'll tell you, I was terrible initially, and I hope that I've gotten better. But I really like being able to organize the information and try to present it in as clear a fashion as I can to the students because I have great respect for you guys, but I also have great empathy because you have so much that you have to learn all at once. And so I try to do what I can to make it easily digestible. And it's always a bonus when I get to interact face to face with students. Haven't had too much of that here lately. But one of the nice things about still having wet labs in micro and immuno is when we do get to see the students face to face and interact with them on a less formal, scale because we can talk to them as people while we're in the laboratory, not just students and faculty, that kind of thing. So I really like interacting with students. I think you guys are amazing because I do a lot of interviews and I get to see your backstories. And by the time you get here, some of you guys have accomplished so much that um, puts me to shame. But no, I'm very proud of what our students have accomplished even before they get here.
That's really cool. So you did mention research. So
Mhm.
I just, what do you do research in? And I guess how's that going pre and post COVID?
Well, I am an immunologist and parasitologist by training. My PhD work was actually in the immune response to the malaria parasite Plasmodium falciparum. And so with the USDA, I actually made monoclonal antibodies so that the predator-prey interactions between insect species could be studied. So if you have a pest species and you've got an animal that preys on that pest species, I could tell which kind of prey the predator were eating just by taking
Whoa.
their gut contents and using my monoclonals to figure out who was eating who in the field. And so I kind of carried on here doing that same kind of research initially, doing the predator-prey interactions. But then it was suggested to me by my chair at that time that I come up with a little bit more medically related research. And so lately I've actually been looking at the immune response to the oral protozoan Trichomonas tenax. And I've had a couple or three graduate students that have helped me with that research project, and it's gone pretty well. We haven't, we were locked out of the laboratory for several months, and so it's been kind of hard to get cranked back up and
Right.
students not being allowed in the laboratories, medical students, dental students not being allowed in the labs have kind of dialed it back a little bit, but hopefully with when things getting a little bit less stringent, we'll be able to get back in the lab full time.
That sounds really cool, actually. I uh I still remember when we used to go to India every year, I would have to take the anti-malaria pill.
Hmm.
So I have a very close place, a warm place in my heart for that parasite. It was so many memories. My mom would have to put like sugar in some milk and like crush up the pill and be like, you just got to take it. You just don't want to get malaria. And so
That's right.
learning about it was one of my favorites because I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. I guess I really didn't want malaria.
No, no, it's not a good thing.
Um, my next question is, what is your favorite part of ATSU KCUM, like the institution and Kirksville as a city to live in, since you have been here teaching for a while now?
For a while. Very tactfully put. I've been here since 1992, if you were wondering. So it's been quite a while, yes.
Well, it
Um,
makes sense why you're such a good professor then.
Lots of practice. Um, well, I think what I like about the institution is the collegiality between the students among themselves, between the students and the faculty, and between the faculty and the administration. I think all facets work really well together. There's a lot of mutual respect and actually a lot of mutual affection, I would say. We don't just respect each other, we like each other and like to be around each other and work with each other. So I think that's probably my favorite part. And then as far as the city goes, I'm used to small towns. You know, Trenton, Missouri is like 7,000 people, and I've
Well,
lived in Chillicothe, Missouri. And actually, the first 5 years of my life, I grew up in Humphreys, Missouri.
oh, I've never heard of that. I've heard of the first two places though.
Well, if you go to Kansas City International Airport,
Right.
if you take Highway 6,
Hmm.
if you blink, you won't see, you'll miss Humphreys, Missouri. But it's along the route to Kansas City International on Highway 6. So, yeah. Just the small town atmosphere, but it's got some bonuses. It's got, you know, a fine liberal arts college here in town, as well as a medical school and a dental school. So it's got the best of all worlds. You need a cultural infusion, you go over to the Lyceum series over at Truman. If you want to go out to Thousand Hills and just hike 3 miles with your dog, you can do that. So it's just the best of all worlds, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I have definitely enjoyed my 2 years in Kirksville, although one of my years has been spent at home pretty much, not really doing much. My last few questions are just to kind of get to know you outside of being Dr. Stewart, my professor of immunology and infectious disease and micro. What are your interests outside of teaching? Like, what do you do for fun?
Okay. Well, before COVID, I was really involved in Kirksville Community Chorus.
Oh, I
And
did. I sang with them too, but then they
oh,
got
did
shut
you?
down. I did. I came
Exactly.
for a few rehearsals and then everything got shut down. It took me months to just return my music.
Right. Well, the last year that it was still up and running, I had to kind of step back because I was new to the chair position here. And so I felt like I couldn't spend a lot of time with it. But I tell you, once they get back up and going, I'm going back because I really miss it. I really like the music. I really like interacting with people from town, not just the university, but
Hmm.
it gives you a different crowd to get to know. And so that's something I really enjoy. I'm also a Rotarian. And again, that's given me a new group of people to interact with that all are kind of like-minded as far as service goes, service to community internationally, that kind of thing. And beyond that, I was able to become the Rotaract faculty mentor here on campus. And again, it's been kind of rough here this last year doing
Right.
things, but previous to that, we had a really active group, and I really enjoyed my interaction with the students as we did service activities.
That's awesome. Um, I'm trying to think of something else that I can ask to shine a spotlight. Oh, right. So you do teach immunology and you teach some micro and you teach some infectious disease. If you
Right.
had to pick one that was your favorite to teach, which is your
Okay.
favorite to teach and why?
Well, that's a tough question. I think parasites are fun. So I think those are my uh, funnest, is that a real word? Most
It
fun
can be.
lectures. I think those are the most fun to teach. But you know, I've really put a lot of effort into, especially my Immunology 2 lectures. Those are the toughest because I've had to learn some clinical things beyond just basic immunology. And so those have been the most challenging and thus I think the most rewarding for me because I've taught myself a lot of things I didn't know coming into this institution. So I would have to kind of make it a tie between the fun parasitology stuff and the challenging but fulfilling Immunology 2 information.
That's cool. I probably like parasites more than immunology too, though. However, immunology too did stick in my brain,
Okay, well
which is
that's good.
surprising. Yes. There's just so much. I'm like, wow, so many diseases, so little time.
That's right.
And just to wrap things up, I guess, so I experienced case presentations and micro and wet labs and everything pre-COVID, which I'm really fortunate to have had that. And I now know the transition to post-COVID. Obviously, we do our case presentations over Zoom and things like that. Going forward, like future after COVID, what things in curriculum and teaching would you say are things that we should keep, and what do you think we should go back to doing as before? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really missed wet labs, like I said before, because it's just such a good venue for interacting with students one-to-one and not just being all serious and trying to get through the information in a 50-minute time period,
Right.
but actually having conversations with people. So I would like to see wet labs return, and I would like to see in-person case presentations return also. Um, Things to keep post-COVID, there does not need to be any 7 a.m. meeting anywhere that needs to be in person.
Oh, I agree. I
So,
do agree.
so all those 7 a.m. meetings, they can stay Zoom as far as I'm concerned.
I definitely appreciate having some of those 7:30 lectures on Zoom too, so I can have my cup of tea and some snacks and my heater that's right here actually.
Right. Yeah, so some lectures, I think a couple of blizzard days, I was terrified to go out and try to drive to school. So it was nice being able to just crank up my computer and say, hello, everybody. I'm going to give you my lecture from my bedroom here. So sit back,
Right.
relax, have your tea, and I'll tell you what I need to tell you today.
Oh, do you feel like infectious disease and immunology as a class is probably the most, I guess, besides clinical medicine where there's medications and diagnoses changing
Sure.
every day? Because I feel like physiology doesn't really change, anatomy is not going to change, and like biochemistry, things like that, they're pretty stable subjects. Do you feel like, I mean, since you're chair now, I guess I can ask you, it's like, the curriculum and all of these things. Do you feel like it's the most fluctuant of the subjects where you have to be really on top of what's going on with vaccines and diseases and
Yeah, there's not a year where I can go without updating my lecture information. Um, I think it is hard to keep up with it, and I think it's important to keep up with it. I would maybe differ with you about biochemistry is also something that's very changeable, especially with the knowledge about genetic diseases. That's
oh,
something
true.
else that you have to actually really keep up with. But you're right. It's one of the least static of the disciplines. I would say immunology and microbiology, infectious diseases is one of the least static. So it's the most changeable, and you really have to keep on top of things.
And sorry, I keep saying I'm going to close now, but I guess I will close with, since I just got vaccinated with
Ah, good.
my COVID-19, I finished the series.
Good for you.
How do you feel about the vaccines? Like they're coming out so fast, and they're like approved for emergency approval. And
Mhm.
do you think these are going to be given out like flu shots, or in your vaccine chart, like where do they belong in our basic science question after case presentations, for example?
Okay. Well, I think they will continue to evolve. The ones that have been approved for emergency use here in the United States, I have complete faith in. We don't know how long the protection will actually last, just because no one's had them, have been
Right.
vaccinated for very long. So I had a friend of mine erroneously think that the protection only lasted 90 days. I said, oh, no, no. We know that it lasts 90 days. We don't know how long it will extend beyond that because most people haven't been vaccinated for more than 90 days. So we just can't say. But I
Right.
think actually definitely we'll need boosters like we do with the influenza vaccine. And whether that booster comes 6 months later or a year later, I don't know. And of course, the formulation I think will have to change as well with new variants coming to the forefront. But the ones that we have right now, definitely the Pfizer, Moderna, and the Johnson and Johnson, I would say they're all equally. Um, uh, I wouldn't wait for one over another. So
Right.
whichever one that you're offered, that's the one that you should take. But no, they're highly efficacious. I think they're all very safe. And so I hope that no one has any safety issues that will keep them from not getting the vaccine because definitely having the disease is a lot more dangerous than getting the vaccine.
Right. I just think it's pretty wild when we were discussing vaccines way back when, and I feel like first semester almost. Yeah, in
Yep,
immunology one,
right?
when you talk about the development of vaccines and how it took them so long, and even with the polio vaccine, like think like
Yep.
the very first few vaccines that came out, and then thinking about this where now we have three choices that came out within a year.
Hmm.
It's just crazy how fast
Yeah, well,
science moves.
way back in 2003 when the first SARS um, uh, it was an epidemic, not a pandemic, but when SARS first arose, they decided that anytime a coronavirus became a problem, they were going to actually target the spike protein. So many years ago, no matter which coronavirus reared its ugly head, they thought that the spike protein would be a good target, and so that
Hmm.
was already decided. There was no
Oh,
messing around with what antigen are we going to target with this SARS-CoV-2. They already knew it's going to be the spike protein. And then as far as mRNA vaccines go, there were already human trials for other vaccines that used mRNA vaccines in place. And so a rabies mRNA vaccine has been in human trials. Um, Another couple of, I don't recall which ones right now, but it's not like mRNA was just poof. This is the first time we're ever going to even
right,
think about using these. They have been used in human trials, and so it wasn't as new as what everyone is, hand waving about.
right. I mean, I guess just as a medical student now, with the knowledge that I have, with the very limited knowledge that I have about development and things like that, it's pretty awe-inspiring to see how
Sure.
quickly the wheels can be turned when you have the pieces, like you're just putting the pieces together. You can almost like see the scientist being like, let me just connect all of these dots that I have from all of this experience that I have and like put this out. And yeah, I feel very lucky to have been vaccinated, to have gotten that opportunity. And
Absolutely.